Fancy Fiddles. Hello, this is Jeremy Bartel with the Baroque Violin Shop, and today I have gathered all of our fancy fiddles. What I mean by that is a lot of very fun violins. So we have a collection of new and old, but fancy fiddles in a lot of shops are there to create attention and kind of just there for fun. They're not there for the person going off to study music. They're not there for a professional unless they want to collect them. They're more just to be adorned. And so this first guy, this is Mr. Beethoven. And a fun history on this one, obviously you all know Beethoven later in life was losing his hearing. And we do tours with kiddos and we always say, does he look happy? And they say no. And there's a story of Beethoven was brought out with an orchestra and they were debuting one of his pieces. And they brought him out and he sat on the side, and this was when he was older. They sat him on the side and he looked up and he saw the conductor go and the orchestra played the piece. And 10 minutes later, he wasn't looking. I think he probably had closed his eyes and was in his head and he couldn't really hear that well. The orchestra stopped. And Beethoven's over on the side, still counting. Because he hadn't finished. He was playing the music in his head. But in this, he's depicted as kind of a little scrunchy face. Just because historically that's kind of what happened as he was losing his hearing. This one is a Southwest Motif violin, which has an incredible amount of inlays in it, and that's very hard as far as workmanship and pulling that off. It's really hard to do, and a lot of this stuff, it's just the makers did it for the artistry. If they were making instruments to sell for a lot of money, they would make these for the artistry, for when people would come into their shop and just kind of be wowed by what they saw. This one, some of these kind of have historical significance with wars and things like that, and it's depicting a soldier who is, probably on the way out, and the angel, has come to him, and it has the carvings on the back, and then some stuff on the scroll. And in these instruments, I said that a professional or somebody doesn't buy them for the playability, and that's because of all the extra wood and just kind of the oddities of it not being a true graduated back. The sound in these, they don't project like nice expensive violins. Again, it's just for the look. This one has some leaves in the back there. It's got some leaves on the front. So I had pulled these from all over our shop. We have them in a lot of different rooms, and we've collected them for a very long time. For the sole purpose of just sharing and kind of bringing joy to people, and almost in like a museum setting where you just kind of look at stuff and it's really fun to look at. This is the classic Latin riddle that has historically been put on a lot of violins, and it's a riddle, and it says, "In life I was silent, in death I sing." What you think about that one? It's in relation to music. Maybe something growing in the forest. This one has the double purfling on the back and on the top. And Maggini was a famous maker who put the double purfling in the instruments. And so this one was kind of paying homage and just again being fancy for fun. We've got violins also, fancy fiddles that are very oddly shaped. And these, if you watch our identification videos or have already watched them, we just talk about makers who kind of didn't necessarily know what they were doing, and maybe this guy really thought he was onto something. And as far as construction, each of those pieces of ribs, there's an inlaid, if you look really close, purfling just like on the top. So all these violins take a lot of work. Again, they're just kind of fancy and fun. This has gamba style F-holes, which you'd see on viola da gambas and viola d'amores and all that Baroque period stuff. Then we've got this one. has the lute on the back there, one of the early instruments. Sometimes the pegs are kind of fun with the pearl inlays. I'm just missing some there, but just again, they're fancy. It's fun to look at. They're fun to have around, but tonally, it's just not there for them to sound and be powerful instruments. This is one of my favorites. That guy is Paganini, the firecracker of a player who's just amazing. And in his day, he was so good that he had to write his own music, and this violin is just paying homage to him. But the workmanship of just how beautifully that's put in there, to me, this is a very tasteful, artistic carving on the back there, a relief carving. This one is on our scavenger hunt with the kiddos, the classic spider and snake. Can you airbrush a violin? Sure. Should you airbrush a violin? Not for tone, but if you want to, this is what it would look like. I know sometimes the kids might show up in your classroom and say, I got a purple violin. And you should probably, the first thing you say is, take it back. But this one, there was a guy in our shop, his name was Larry, and he did some airbrushing on the side, and my dad said, hey Larry, let's get the spider and snake on there. So there you have that one, spider and snake. This one, while we're on non-traditional looking, this is an aluminum violin. In a fun short history, the Alcoa aluminum factory in the early 1900s had a patent at one point that they put on making a violin out of aluminum. And I think they maybe thought it was a good idea as far as durability, but they sound very, very bad. If you know Fretschner, the German company, in the 40s, they actually took this idea further in a good way when they put it on a bass, an upright bass. And what they did was they made the body out of its aluminum, but inside they put the the blocks and the bracings and a bass bar, and they made a legitimate bass with a true maple neck and an ebony fingerboard, and those were actually America imported them for the Navy ships so that the jazz band could have an upright bass. So even though it's bad in a violin, it's kind of interesting that that took off. And actually Sting, he has an upright bass from the Fretschner that is one of those metal basses, so you can look that up on your own if you want to see what his looks like. But this one, it does not sound good at all, but it's kind of a fun story. We've got this one. This is called a Mastiff inlay. Mastiff means that the chunks of pearl have been set in there, but then what's holding them in place, this black Mastiff, is ebony dust in a super glue, or in the day something similar, to where they would make the design and the pattern, drop in the pieces, let it dry, and then you'd have to smooth it over. But this is a Mastiff inlay in the back of this one. And again, things like that look great, but tonally they take away from it being an instrument that would be played in an orchestra. This is another really nice carving on the back of this one. We've got at times carvings on the ribs, carvings on the scroll. And then one more of these old fancy fiddles. This one, again, it's got that Latin riddle. Fairly common, really fun. So now we're going to segue into some really interesting instruments. These are called Hardanger fiddles, and these first appeared in Norway in the 1600s, and this was their folk instrument. They typically are heavily adorned with inlay on the fingerboard. It's bowed and played the 4 strings on top that you would like a violin, but the other 4 strings are underneath, and those are called sympathetic strings. And those actually, when it's in tune, they vibrate with the sound of the strings being played and give these Hardanger fiddles and violins their unique sound. We've got another one. This one is probably most definitely older. This is an older Hardanger, but same really pretty inlays. they would typically have a lion of some type, or maybe a dragon, or just a really funky, a little dusty, a very fun, non-traditional scroll. Which even that, just by itself, you know, it's a piece of art. It's really hard to do that and pull that off. This is the body. And that, at times, on some of the ribs of these you've seen, it's inlaid. Some of them, it's just etched in there. It's recessed. On this one, it's actually painted. So there's different ways that they would make them fancy. So that's some of the older stuff over here. Over here is some modern instruments that are fancy as well, and they're kind of on a similar note, just doing things because it's fun and it looks cool. But before we get to the new instruments, I want to show you La Pochette, the pocket violin. So this one Stradivarius did make, and I think historically, I guess you just wanted to hit the town with the violin in your pocket, and if the mood struck you, you want to start playing. So this was La Pochette, aka the pocket violin. I imagine very hard to play, but Joel had actually dressed this fingerboard and fixed it, and we put a bridge, and you can play it. Again, very small sound, not a very powerful instrument, but it is really fun. La Pochette. This guy, if you all know the mutes and things you put on for certain pieces, it's a mute that goes on your bridge. And also at times, maybe back in college or when you don't want to be too loud in your apartment, you put on the mute so that the violin or viola or cello bass doesn't have a big boomy sound. And this is an antique practice violin. So if Larry the farmer is practicing at midnight because he just loves to practice his violin, well, Sandy from next door is trying to sleep and get up early and milk the cows, and she says, "Hey, Larry, keep it down." I imagine this was invented as a silent violin or practice violin because it has no body to resonate, but you could still practice, you could still have fun, and it just wouldn't be loud. So that one's a really fun practice violin. This one is a trumpet violin. Yes, a trumpet and a violin. So the way that it works is the bridge is attached to the cone here, and historically this is more of a gypsy instrument or a street musician, a busker's instrument, who you'd play along with a guitar, and it did have, here it's broken off, an arm on the side, a shoulder, if you will. And what's fun about this is it actually would be for the violinist to do some singing, and so they'd be here playing, and then this resonates and projects the violin, but also a little bit of the vocals as well. You can find some videos online, but this one's just really fun to see because it is quite literally a trumpet violin. So next I want to talk about a Baroque instrument really quick. This is an instrument that we had made for us. My dad found in an Italian book there was a really pretty violin that had this carving, and he had a great idea, this was 10 plus years ago, to send it off and see if one of our makers couldn't recreate this. And these sat in the white, which means no varnish. They sat in the white for almost 10 plus years until one of our makers was finally able to pull off a convincing varnish that has a nice antique. This is a modern setup with the ebony fingerboard and the projection, the height here on the fingerboard of a modern violin. This one is a true Baroque instrument with gut strings. It's got a shorter fingerboard this way, shorter, and the projection is lower. And so we actually have this model in each of these versions, and if any of you teachers would like to get into Baroque playing, we do have some true Baroque instruments, and if you don't know, or you'll find out watching these videos, teachers get half price on all of our new instruments. And so if you want to get into Baroque stuff, We do have true Baroque instruments, but I thought this would be a fun one to show you with those carvings and those scrolls. These ones are really fun. And on a lot of instruments, there's this hole through the back, and on some of the instruments, it was because the makers and their bench by their bench would have wires, and they would just stick things up on the hooks. And so that's why sometimes instrument scrolls have that hole in there. Next, I want to talk about these head fiddles. So J.B. Violin was a famous maker of bows and instruments in London, in Paris, in Mirecourt specifically. And in the 1800s, in his shop, he had a maker, and his name was Derzé. And the Gaspero da Sala was a famous Italian instrument adorned with some carvings and fancy stuff like this. And so Violin, I told you, shops have these for the looks to create attention. He had a great idea for Derzé to make these violins, which all have and had, as he was making them, an old man, if you will, on the scrolls, which are really finely executed. Latin on the ribs, saying different things. The tops would sometimes have these in the corners, the little leaves, versus traditional purfling. And on these ones, the back, this is a crest of some kind. Some of these, and we had a customer in the other month getting his checked up on, which we sold, but sometimes they also had cityscapes on the back. And so these, a nickname for these is the Disciples, or head fiddles. But this is actually, Derzé made these, and actually Charlie Daniels, this was his main violin that he played, was one of these head fiddles. So I just wanted to share these because they're just super fun. Super fun. Now we're going to transition to some modern fancy fiddles. And these I'm just going to show you for fun. Again, tonally, they're not for the sound. We've collected them because they look awesome and they're just really fun. So this one has a really thick, real thick edge. It's not painted. The wood was left there and it was carved out around it. So this one just has a really fun edge all around it. This one sounds okay, but again, it's heavy because all that wood that was left. It doesn't have the graduations of an instrument that's meant to be for tone. So that one just has fancy edges. This one has real subtle, just kind of etched around the outsides, and probably some of this modern stuff was maybe on a CNC machine and it wasn't quite done by hand. And with some of that older stuff, like the Paganini, for example, I love that stuff because it is a true piece of art that was hand carved. And not that this isn't, it's just, in my opinion, it's new. It's just in a different category. But it's still really fun, and kids and adults alike just really like to look at this collection of stuff that we have. This one's got a nice little albaloma, mother of pearl flower on the back there, a rose, I believe. This one has a really thick inlay, similar to the Hellier Strad, if you all know the Hellier instruments. Stradivarius made one. This is our Hellier model with, again, that Mastiff along the edge with the ebony dust and inlaid with the pearl. But on this one, I told you sometimes it's carved in there. When Stradivarius did his, on the sides, believe it or not, it's not painted on. On the one Stradivarius did, and our maker actually did the same thing on this, he painstakingly carved that out and put a Mastiff all the way around. So this is kind of, just a similar Mastiff, but it's not so much the master quality. Then we've got this one, which the front has just a little bit of stuff going on the edges. But I told you on the Derzé fiddle, sometimes they would do cityscapes. And so on this one, We've got a nice cityscape. Again, these newer instruments are kind of just, you know, paying homage and doing the same thing that people always kind of did, was, you know, put, you know, cityscapes in there and different fun inlays. And depending on who's making it, you know, the quality varies based on that. This one was just the dragon. This one was an awesome, probably Chinese New Year dragon, but that's a really fun one. We've got the eagle. This was one of our makers. He made it for my dad, actually, because they both loved eagles, just kind of for what they stood for, and for America as far as just opportunity, and also just power and beauty. So that one's got the bald eagle. This one, it's got the quail. Got a quail in the back there. Not as scary as a dragon. Pretty cool. And this one, Bach. He's not on the scroll. In this case, he's just on the back there. So putting a composer on the scroll or on the back, again, is just kind of something that people do for fun. This one is Mike Arnold in our office. This is his most favorite violin. He dubbed this one Vader violin. I said over here, these oddly shaped ones, like this. Again, it's just kind of a thing makers do, is do odd shapes. And this one is definitely an odd shape. Very pretty maple. It's a very pretty instrument. We've had a ton of fun with it over the years. Mike especially, playing it, looking at it. It's awesome. But that's our Vader violin. And then just one more to show you. Again, just the composer on the scroll, this one. And then in this case, on the back, with again that thick Mastiff pearl inlay versus a traditional purfling. So I hope you had fun looking at our fancy fiddles. It was really fun to share them all. If anybody is ever able to visit, we always have, you know, we're here for you, and we'd love to invite you. Anybody is always welcome from wherever you are. If you're ever near us and want to tour and want to check out our shop and some of these fancy fiddles in person, you know where to find us. So I hope you enjoyed the fancy